there's a glare in my office, so it's too bright. I had to situate myself.
Senator Kent, you are live on Facebook.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us this morning. I am Senate DFL leader Susan Kent, and we are here today because what happened in our nation's capital on January 6th was a violent affront to our democracy that left our country shocked and outraged. Leaders from all over the country, Republicans and Democrats alike, have condemned the actions of the violent mob, as well as the lies that were told about our election integrity that led directly to the actions of that day. Words matter, and it is our responsibility as leaders to speak out against lies and to shine a light on the truth, because we saw what can happen when we don't. I was very pleased to see that the Minnesota House of Representatives recently passed House Resolution 1 in a bipartisan vote of 111 to 8. 83% of House members voted to condemn the violence that took place on January 6th and to affirm the support for democracy, the rule of law, and free and fair elections. Shortly after that vote, I spoke with Senator Gazelka about the potential for the Senate to pass the same bipartisan House language, pointing out the opportunity for a unified, strong message from the Minnesota legislature. He asked about putting forth an alternative, weaker version that did not affirm clearly that our elections are free and fair. I let him know this would not be acceptable to the Senate DFL caucus. We believe that this moment calls for strong messages from all leaders. Then last Tuesday, I sent a letter to Senator Gazelka, signed by our entire caucus, formally requesting that the language from H.R. 1 be brought to the Senate floor unamended. I reiterated that a unified, consistent statement on a bipartisan basis from both bodies, from all four caucuses, would send a strong and important message of unity during this time. Senator Gazelka said he would bring this to the Republican leadership for discussion. Then last Thursday, I received a response that was frankly very disappointing. In his letter, he indicated that Senate Republicans would not support bringing up the language of H.R. 1 unamended. Rather, they wanted to put forth his resolution that first, does not acknowledge that our elections are free and fair, and second, tries to make the false equivalence of what happened at the U.S. Capitol with what happened over the summer. Again, 3 of the 4 caucuses of the Minnesota legislature, both the House and the Senate, support this language. It is so important to send a clear message to Minnesotans that we not only condemn the violence, but that we stand for truth and defend our democracy and free and fair elections. At this point, the Senate Republicans are not willing to acknowledge those simple facts, and I worry about the damage that we will cause to our democracy and our election system long term. I am also troubled that the dishonesty about the security of our election system here in Minnesota is being used by Senate Republicans to push a legislative agenda that would further undermine our democracy and interfere with Minnesotans' access to their fundamental right to vote. I urge Senator Gazelka and Senate Republicans to reconsider. Take this language up on the Senate floor, unamended, as quickly as possible, and show that we, as Minnesota legislators, are united around these fundamentals of our democracy. And now I will turn it over to Assistant Minority Leader Melissa Franzen.
Thank you, Leader Kent. And I, like many others, watched in horror and disappointment, disbelief, and shock as the events of January 6th of 2021 unfolded at our nation's capital. I immediately drafted a resolution, SR 9, that was similar to HR 1, condemning the violence at the U.S. Capitol and affirming support for our free and fair elections. My bill was scheduled to receive a hearing in the Senate Rules Committee, and I received a call from Senate President Jeremy Miller to accept changes from the Senate majority in committee. As the chair of Rules Committee, Senator Gazelka was willing to hear the resolution, but made it clear that Senate Republicans would weaken the language. The main difference is that they wanted to strike our language related to acknowledging this election was legitimate and replace watered down language on elections, generally speaking. And I quote, their usage or their language was, whereas we are committed to ensuring the integrity of free and fair elections in Minnesota. And in contrast, our resolution read, and I quote, we are committed to upholding the results of the free and fair elections that was just held. This might seem trivial, but it strikes at the core of a dangerous conspiracy theory that white supremacists, hyper-nationalists, and other extremists accept as truth. This is beyond disappointing, as part of the goal of the resolution was to put an end to the lies that led to the violence at the US Capitol and that are continuing to be told today. It is dangerous and simply untrue to make these false claims, and we as leaders have a responsibility to call out the lies and redirect people to the truth. However, the only compromise that was presented to me at that time was to amend my resolution to extend the language beyond the US Capitol violence. With the strong support of our caucus, I could not agree to that end. And rather than risk having a resolution passed without the important piece of acknowledging our free and fair elections and stopping the lies, I decided to pull it from consideration. After the House passed H.R. 1 in a bipartisan vote on January 25th, I submitted another resolution, S.R. 21, with the exact same language as H.R. 1. It is my hope and sincere ask that the Senate Republicans bring up S.R. 21 and pass it unamended so that we can show you and rise to be the leaders of truth and integrity that Minnesotans deserve. Our democracy was violently attacked on January 6th. But the fact is that it has been threatened for a long time by elected officials who thought lies, misinformation, and half-truths were more important than telling their constituents the truth. And the truth is the election was free and fair. All of us should be able to condemn the violence we saw on January 6th, but we all need to come together, stand up for the truth, and put a stop to spreading these dangerous lies that undermine the foundation of our democracy. Our colleagues in the majority have asked us to listen to people who have questions about the integrity of our election and who are angry about the results. We agree we must listen, but the members of the majority should stop lying about the election or question its integrity. Our democracy is in crisis. We need leaders to stand up for the truth. And
We are having trouble with Senator Franzen's audio.
can you hear me now?
Yes,
I'm not sure where I left off.
probably just a sentence or two.
So I want to end with a quote from Stacey Abrams from the Washington Post, an opinion piece she published yesterday. We don't know how many chances we'll get to reverse our democracy's near-death experience. We must not waste this one. We must go big. The future of democracy demands it. And with that, I want to pass it on to Assistant Minority Leader Fang He.
Thank you, Senator Franzen. I also support the language of House Resolution 1 as written. It is the right thing to do. I applaud the House of Representatives for coming together in a bipartisan way on behalf of the people of Minnesota. They put their duty above politics by condemning the violence at our national capital on January 6th and affirming support for our democracy and a free and fair election system. Our election system and our democracy are the strongest and the best in the world, where other countries look at us and our nation, the United States of America, as a model. Generations after generations of indigenous, Black and brown people, immigrants, and refugees have built this country to make life better and more democratic. We cannot allow division and deception to destroy what so many people before us have worked so hard and fought to preserve. I urge the Senate Republicans to take up H.R. 1 on the Senate's floor, unamended. And now I will turn to my colleague, Assistant Minority Leader, Nick Prince. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Senator Herr. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you everyone for attending. Freedom equals democracy. When our democracy is under attack, so is Americans' freedom. I too express my support for the language of House Resolution 1 and call on my Senate Republican colleagues to do the same. It's a crucial time for our nation's democracy. When a resolution passes in the House 111 to 8, as this one did, and Senate GOP leadership says we will not hear that language on the floor, I think Minnesotans, both Democrats and Republicans, are going to say, why? What's the reason? Why do we have Republicans voting yes in the House and a refusal to even have the language, have a heard and up and down vote in the Senate? This is the kind of thing that makes people say that party politics are more important than governing. That is not what the people of Minnesota say they want. The resolution is a great example of what we can do to work together. We can pass this resolution. We can send a signal that all four caucuses are on the same page, and we can do this in a way that takes little legislative time away from the other important work. The issue here before us, I agree with my colleagues, seems to be the language confirming that we had a free and fair election. I see colleagues supporting a rally with the language, "Stop the steal." I ask everyone in Minnesota, steal, an election stolen that put Republicans in charge in the Senate was stolen? I don't think that makes a lot of sense. What are our core values as Americans? Honesty, integrity. These are the principles our country was founded on, and we are called as leaders to step up and not only defend those principles, but shut down any challenge to them that is unfair, untrue, unethical, biased, or any other way to twist the truth. Liz Cheney, Republican leader in the House, yesterday said about the election rhetoric, people have been lied to. What we are saying as a caucus is we want to pass this resolution, confirm that Minnesota elections are free and fair, show our support for the hardworking election workers and the millions of Minnesotans who took the time to go vote and express themselves. Minnesotans deserve a united front on this resolution. And I ask my Senate Republican colleagues to bring the language of House Resolution 1 to the Senate floor unamended. Bring it to the floor, let's pass it, and then we can get on to the work of agreeing what's best for our state. Thank you very much. I now turn it back to Senator Kent.
Thank you, Senator Frentz. And with that, we will open it up to questions. Bill Werner in chat has asked to ask a question.
Yeah, Senator Kent, two-part question. First of all, do you anticipate any action on the Senate floor today or in the near future to try to get this resolution up? And the second part of my question, I guess I want to state this carefully. The issue has to do with the condemnation of the violence in D.C. versus extending it to George Floyd. The other side is the free and fair elections. Are you willing to try to get at least something out of this to drop one of those? Maybe keep the maybe say to Republicans, hey, let's get the George Floyd thing out of this, and in exchange for that, okay, even though we don't agree with you, we'll leave the free and fair elections piece out of this resolution.
Thank you, Bill. I'm going to take your questions in opposite order. Ultimately, this is language that was accepted on a bipartisan basis in a very strong way by House Republicans. What we're asking is for a unified voice. And I don't think it should be even necessary to negotiate, as you suggest, on these fundamental principles that we need to stand up and acknowledge that the election in November was free and fair. As Senator Frentz said, I think you're looking at a group of people who, if they wanted to complain about the outcome of an election, we might be on that list of people doing it, but we're not. We recognize that the voices of Minnesotans were heard, and we all need to hold hands and say that very same thing. And the best possible way to do that is for all four of us to adopt the language that was adopted by the House on a bipartisan basis. And so to your point about if there will be action today on the floor, no. We have tried, as Senator Franzen went through, she has been working on this since January 7th. She spoke on the floor. We weren't obviously able to turn a resolution around one day later, but she spoke on the floor on January 7th about this and has been working to try to get something passed. But Senate Republicans have made it clear that they're not interested in a clear statement about the state of the elections in November 2020 and the fact that that was a legitimate election, that they want to water down that language and they want to distract from the importance of that message by trying to link it to something that is completely unrelated.
Thank you, Madam Leader. Appreciate it.
Any additional questions?
May I shoot another one in if nobody else is?
Go right ahead, Bill. I haven't seen anybody else.
Yeah, just I understand that it was passed from a bipartisan standpoint in the Minnesota House of Representatives, and we're not on the floor, so I can probably question motivations, but I suspect that some of those folks over there knew that that this wasn't going to go anywhere in the Senate, so they can kind of not worry about it. How do you get around that negotiation roadblock?
Well, resolutions are passed in the House and resolutions are passed in the Senate. It's different than when you have legislation that needs to be passed in both bodies in order for it to be effective. This is about a statement. We recognize this. This is clearly about a statement, but this is a time when leaders are called upon to make a strong statement. Senator Frentz talked about the comments made by Representative Cheney. Senator Ben Sass has done a similar type of statement, being very clear that the notion that the election was stolen is a lie. And I believe we should have the exact same type of statement coming out from leaders of both parties here in Minnesota. And that is the point of all of this. And the fact that one caucus out of 4 is reluctant to do that is, as I said, disappointing. There are some probably other better adjectives.
And may I add?
Yes, Senator Franzen.
Thank you, Senator Kent. I would also add that it wasn't a concurrent resolution, which means it would have to come up in the Senate. So they were single resolutions in both bodies and they weren't concurrent. The other piece, and I worked closely with Representative Jamie Long, who was the chief author of the House Resolution 1. They were open to amendments, and the Republicans made amendments to their first version. So they went through the process, found language that was comfort language, and they were able to get a bipartisan vote. We tried that here as well in the Senate, but it was futile because the intent of the resolution is to focus on what happened in the U.S. Capitol, which was an attempt to overthrow our election and overthrow our government, and it's considered sedition. So it's very different than the right to protest. If you want to extend it to any right to protest around our country, we can talk about condemning violence, but what happened in the U.S. Capitol had a different undertone and underpinning and motive. And certainly, as we learn more in the media and from investigations, it's been clear that we should stand strong regardless of party line to stand for our democracy, stand for our government and our system of laws and our election system. A lot of elected officials and electoral workers have been targeted since then. So we want to make sure that we restore some sort of normalcy to our election system. And this is just step one. It is a symbol, but a strong symbol that regardless of party line, we are against sedition. We're against the overthrow of our government and the overthrow of our election system as we know it.
Thank you both.
Ricardo Lopez.
Yeah, I just wanted some clarity on what we can expect today in the floor session on this resolution. Will there actually be a vote held on this resolution, even if Republicans seek to amend it? I recall that when there was an effort to require a mask on the Senate floor, once Republicans amended that was rescinded. So I'm just curious, will there be a vote on this resolution, even if it's amended?
Thank you. No, we're not going to bring this up. We've talked to Senate Republicans in every way we can about different versions, and they've made it clear that they want to put forward a version that would weaken the language and distract from the message. It is not a clear and honest statement about what has happened. And so, we're just, this is purely, we wanted to make a statement as a unified legislature, and that's not possible. And so we're just making a statement to make sure everybody's aware of that.
Just clear, you're just calling on them to bring forth to the floor this version of the House resolution.
Yes, the Senate, and as Senator Franzen said, she has introduced Senate Resolution 21, which is identical to the HR 1, and we think there are times where legislators like to, play around with a little bit of language. This is a case where doing a unified, consistent statement matters. And that is what we are asking for. Senator Frentz, yes.
Thank you, Senator Kent, and thank you, Ricardo. We're talking about resolution language in which 160 of our state's 201 legislators have already voted for it or have indicated they would like to vote for it in its exact form. So what we're saying is, please, let's put this on the floor and have a vote. Every legislator has the right to vote against it, but we do not see a reason for changing the language or giving up our right to ask that it be brought to the floor.
Great, thank you so much.
Shannon Lurkey asks in chat, what do you think the chances are that the Republicans will support this? They are urging for voter photo ID. I think they've made it clear that they are not interested. That's why we have been trying to have these conversations with them since January 7th. And they have made it clear that they're not going to support this language. They are not going to support any statement that does not distract or fail to affirm clearly that the elections in November were fair and free. Shannon, you bring up a really good point, which is why, some would say, well, this has gone on for a few weeks. Why are we still talking about this? We're still talking about this because it's related to an ongoing discussion about election fraud, which is now being tied into Senate Republicans' legislative agenda. And we've already seen their bill that would put restrictions and have the effect of limiting people's access to vote through voter ID and also through provisional ballots. The point in all of this is that this disinformation, the dishonesty about election fraud, which has gone on long before the year 2020, and has been used in states across the nation with efforts here in Minnesota as well to enact measures that are effectively voter suppression. That's the continued agenda as we're seeing it. We're seeing this across the country as well in state legislatures. And so that is why we think it's important that everybody understand and see what's going on when Senate Republicans refused to acknowledge that the election in November of 2020 was free and fair and that and legitimate in every way.
I have a question, if I can jump in.
Mary,
yes. So I went in chat, but I'll just dive in. Two members of the Senate Republican caucus could have higher ambitions. We know one for sure is running for party chair right now, and the majority leader could be running for governor. Do you see that as a factor at all right now in some of the decision making?
I just likely, possibly, I don't really know, and I would certainly welcome my colleagues' thoughts on this as well. But, I think it's unfortunate that that kind of political calculus is going into something that is as fundamental and should be nonpartisan as affirming our elections. And that is why to us, this rises above partisan politics. That's why we were so gratified to see the House pass it in such a strong and bipartisan way, because it should be. But if individuals are factoring that and their personal ambitions into this decision and how we speak to the people of Minnesota, that's just really unfortunate.
Yeah, I might add, Mary, as we watch the House vote proceed, I don't think Minnesotans are criticizing either Republicans or Democrats in the House for their yes votes. I think we're talking about some basics: honesty, integrity, democracy, freedom. And those legislators that will put their name next to a yes vote on this resolution, I think will not only not receive some kind of pushback or crimping of their future ambitions, but a thumbs up from the average Minnesotan.
All right, we probably have time for one more question if there is one. All right, well, thank you all for joining us, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Stay warm, everybody. Take care.